Welcome to the To Be Honest podcast and the first episode of season 3. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Emma Boyd, a 17-year-old queer student in the South Bay who's going to share their personal experience with mental health during the pandemic, as well as their upbringing and how that impacts their present life. Emma is also really interested in behavioral health in general and finds it really interesting how people become the people they are through lived experiences and the things they've learned. So welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Hello.
I like to start every podcast episode by asking the guest, to be honest, how are you doing today?
Well, to be honest, I'm just a little bit tired from school today, but overall, I think I'm pretty okay. Maybe just a little bit hungry, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, it sounds like school's everywhere kind of wrapping up. So I don't know if you're in the middle of finals or anything or AP testing. What's that like for you?
Yeah, it's like AP testing week. Like last week, I had 2 AP exams. Then on Wednesday, I have another AP exam. So it's like we're all just finishing it up.
Yeah, you're almost at the finish line. So
yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me about your experiences.
Yeah, of course.
So I'd like to start just learning a bit about your background. I know that you had kind of an interesting upbringing. So I was wondering, what was your childhood like?
Well, I've grown up in a Christian household. I've gone to church pretty much my whole life. It's I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty normal for me because the majority of my closest friends were from church, and all my parents their friends went to church, so it's oh, these are my friends, I guess. I think my parents have raised me pretty well too. I think they're really great people. I think it was relatively normal. I played sports. I did kid stuff pretty much. I feel like I didn't really like Barbies, which is kind of or their toys of the stereotypical girl, which was really funny because in contrast to these really heavy gendered stereotypes I got put on me because I was the only girl in my family. But other than that, I think it was relatively normal. I think I was a happy child. I think the only thing that was weird, it was being a queer person in a Christian household, and it was and then not being out to my parents. It was oh my god, does this person know my mom? What are they gonna say? And I was and yeah, that was pretty much it. But overall, I think I had a good childhood. It's relatively interesting, but it was weird because it was oh, conflicting identity from what I'm being told that I should have overall.
Yeah. So what was it like? I'm assuming it was kind of scary coming out to your parents. What was the decision to actually come out to them? And yeah, what was that experience like?
Well, I haven't. I've contemplated it a lot. But then at the same time, I'm gonna wait just for myself because I'm I think that'll be just for my own safety because I don't know how they're gonna respond because my uncle, he's a pastor, and I know his really aggressive conflicting beliefs, so it's I'm scared that it's if my mom says something that she'll say something to my uncle or something, and I just don't want that to get out now. So if it's gonna get out, it'll be when I move away. So that's the goal.
That makes sense. I feel like a lot of queer youth kind of experience that as well. They can't really be themselves around their family until they do leave the house, just for, like you said, safety and housing purposes. It's really important. But if you were to give advice to someone in similar shoes to you, what would that be?
Just do what's best for your safety. I know it's kind of hard leading a double life per se. That sounds kind of bad, but in a sense it's kind of true. But in the end, it's all about your safety and well-being, and I think that's the most important thing because that's what you need to preserve, because you can come out to your parents in a different place, when you know that you'll have a place to go and a steady a more supportive support system. That sounds weird, but yeah. But yeah, you'll have a good, better foundation that you will know to trust in if you are not in a position to come out to your parents at this time, or if you're in this kind of almost toxic positivity environment at church or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Has this situation kind of impacted your mental health at all, or how do you kind of like cope with this, like, not double life, but yeah, like you kind of said, you're kind of one person outside of your household.
Um, my mental health, like, I know, like, as a middle schooler, when I was like figuring everything out, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Why am I like this? And I'd hear people be like, you're like, that's so wrong. Like, why did they do that? Like, why are gay people existing? And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. And it kind of like was like super detrimental, especially like at the time one of my best friends had a boyfriend who was like really homophobic, and like I was like hanging out with him and I was like, wow, this is a terrible person. And thankfully he's changed now, I think, but like at the time I was like, wow, this sucks. And so I had to like stop talking to my friend because she's like, oh, he's just joking. And I'm like, no, he's not. What do you mean? It's like, it just like, it wasn't good for my mental health. And I had to like step away from like things that I knew were bad for me, because it was just like, it got really bad for me in 8th grade. And I was just like, so like depressed all of the time. And I was like, I can't do anything. But like, yeah, just like going into high school and like stepping away from what I was like told to do, it kind of helped you with that.
Awesome. Yeah. And it sounds like around middle school is when you kind of figured out your sexuality. What was that process like for you? Like, were you Googling things, or did you find like a community that you identified with? What was that process like?
In middle school, um, I remember I feel like this is like a really like gay experience. I like did an am I gay test online, and I was like, maybe the fact that I was like searching that up should have been like maybe, but I was like, am I gay? And it's like, yes. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna keep this to myself, not tell anyone, and sit on that. And so I
Yeah.
just like didn't tell anyone. I was like, nah, this is okay. I didn't really like come out as anything to anyone until probably freshman year, because I was like, oh, I can't do this. And I think I initially like came out as pansexual, and I was like, yes, that's the one. And then I realized during the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I don't really like labels. I'm gonna say I'm queer because that just means not straight. So I'm like, this is good. And because it made me feel better. I was like, it just means I'm not straight, so I don't really have to define my sexuality, because I feel like a lot of people, especially like, they always want to place things into boxes, and I'm like, well, it's my business. Like, no one really needs to know all like the little idiosyncrasies of what makes my sexuality. So it's personal, and if I just say queer, it like gets the point across to what you need to know.
Yeah, it's nice that it's like an all-encompassing term, so people can do with it what they want, but you know yourself and what's really going on inside your brain. So I know you were kind of heavily involved with the LGBTQ Youth Space. I was wondering if you could share a bit about how you found the youth space and what that community means to you.
Oh yeah, so I during the pandemic, I was like really sad. And my friend, she noticed that, and she was like, hey, I'm gonna sign you up for this group that we have at school, that is run by the youth space. And I was like, okay. So I got signed up, and then I met Adrienne, who she's so great. And it really was nice to like be in a community of people who like just kind of get it in a sense, because it was like a lot of like queer people that I know, they're all like, I feel like we don't like to talk about stuff a lot sometimes. And so like this, like there being a space where we could all just talk about what we needed to was really nice, and I liked it. And then Adrienne actually gave me the opportunity to help like lead a group, and like I've led a few at this point, and like talk about like what we need to and that kind of stuff. And I think it was really good for me, because I was able to like kind of express my leadership skills a little bit, and I was able to like give people the space that I needed when I was like maybe in their situation. And so I thought that was really nice. Also, they give me like really good TV recommendations, and so they're pretty cool. So that's where I get 90% of my TV recommendations is from that group.
Nice. What kind of groups were you leading?
It's a LGBTQ support group, and
Okay.
it's like a mixture of all these, like everyone from like freshman to senior, and like just like from a variety of identities. And it's at first I was like super intimidated because there's like some like really loud extroverted people, and I was like, oh my god, there's so many people. But then I was like, oh, these people are like me. I didn't think we'd be the same because I don't know. I was like, oh, I'm different. I don't know. But then I was like, oh no, wait, we're like literally, we have so much in common, and it's
Mhm.
really great. And so I've like led talks on honesty, relationships, that kind of stuff. So it's really fun.
Awesome. That's really cool. Sounds like you found like your groove there, which is awesome. And I did want to shift a little bit to just talking about your personal experience with mental health during the pandemic. Like you kind of mentioned, it was a tough time. So I'm curious what kind of happened to your mental health during the pandemic, and when did you first like notice signs that something was kind of off?
I think I've always struggled with mental health a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
I think before the pandemic, it was really just that I got like distracted by like all these other things. Like I had swim, I had marching band, I had work, I had volunteer things. So I had like all these other things to like keep me distracted from what was like going on inside my head. And then like I remember the first week of the pandemic, I barely came out of my room. I sat in my room and just like binge watched the entire show, and like and my parents were worried about me, and my brother thought I went somewhere to the point where I wasn't there. And so it was like my mental health, like what was already like underlying, just kind of became the focus of my life, and it just kind of deteriorated. Even though I'm like relatively introverted, it was really hard to not be able to like do much because those few friends that I did have, they were kind of just like taken away, and it was like, oh, I don't get to see you anymore. And I do love my family, but sometimes it was like I had a hard time like being off around them because I was like, oh, I got to be this perfect child for them because I'm the eldest sibling out of like I have two younger siblings, and then I have two older cousins who we've all like grown up together. So like it was like I could never be off around them. So it was like I gotta be the responsible one, and also I'm the only girl, so it's like I have to fulfill those like things that my parents need me to do. So it was like really hard because instead of it just being like an after school thing or like on the weekends thing, it was like every single day, no break.
Yeah, that's really hard. Did you feel like you could talk to anyone about how you were feeling? I know you kind of mentioned like you have close friends. Was it easy to communicate with them during the pandemic, or what was that experience like as a person in high school?
I have I'm so bad at like talking to people. Like I like there's very few people who I'm like yes, I can talk to you because I just get like really anxious. I'm like, oh, what if they're busy right now? I don't want to bother them. So like during the pandemic, like when my mental health was like declining, I didn't really talk to anyone about it because I was like, oh, they have their own stuff going on. Everyone's probably depressed right now, so they don't need me to like add to that.
Hmm.
But then I was always like that person who I was like, you should be talking to people. Why aren't you talking to anyone about your issues? And I felt like such a hypocrite when I
Yeah.
would hear myself back. And I was like, wow, I'm so hypocritical right now, but that's okay, whatever. But overall, I think like I did actually make a few more like close friends during the pandemic, and I think the pandemic really showed me who my close friends were and those who I just kind of communicated with out of necessity for my day-to-day life.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of people. And I just have to say I relate a lot to what you're saying about being like introverted and not wanting to like reach out to people, especially during the pandemic, like not wanting to burden them, or just like in general, I'm a pretty bad communicator like via phone. So I totally relate to that. And just like, yeah, some people just like kind of dropped off and haven't talked to them in a while. So you definitely see who's there to support you and who's not during those tough times, which is it's kind of nice, I have to say. But
Yeah.
it's tough to also lose, some people that were in your support system before. What are some of the things that you did and also continue to do to take care of your mental health?
I would go on walks and runs because I realized, maybe just like doom scrolling on my phone for hours and hours on end probably isn't the best thing for me to be doing. So I'd go outside, I'd go on a walk, I'd go on runs, and recently I've started to go on a lot of hikes with my friends, because it's like an outside activity, like don't really have to worry about like COVID and that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously yes, but like at the same time, it's like not as dangerous outside that it is inside, like to catch it. And I I play a lot of instruments, so it was really nice because I got to like kind of focus on practicing them and getting better, which music has been like one of the biggest parts of my life, so it was like really nice getting to like get better at that, because I had all this time now, and so it was so nice. And yeah, I also have a plant that I like that I got, and it's my favorite thing in my room. It's just this giant snake plant. So that was something I really got to hang out with during the pandemic. Yeah. Also reading. Reading's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any like favorite like genres or books that you would recommend?
I just finished this book. It's probably one of my favorite books. It's called Darius the Great is Not Okay.
Oh.
It's so good. I love the book. It's so good.
We just launched the To Be Honest book club, and that's the pick right now, is that book.
Oh, it's so good. That book made me cry when I read it. I just recently read the sequel. The sequel's not as good, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I just got really mad at the characters in the sequel, so I was like, but I love Darius the Great Not Okay. It's probably one of my favorites. I think I just like, it's so nerdy that I'm just like, and I'm such a nerd sometimes, and the fact that it just like makes all these references, I'm like, I get this is great, and it was so fun for me to read. Also just like any books like where the author of the book is putting themselves into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've read books where like the author is like trying to make up an identity for someone else, and then it just doesn't feel right. But then when I read the book and I'm like, oh wow, like, and I do research on the author after, I'm like, oh wow, I can really see that in the book, and it makes everything like so much more authentic feeling in
Mm-hmm.
comparison to like when they're making up an identity for someone else.
Definitely. Yeah. They have that personal experience and can put it out there for everyone to kind of relate to. And what advice would you give to other young people who are either in your shoes currently, who are going through a hard time, maybe because it's COVID related, or just in general, maybe feel isolated or feel alone?
I think it's like a good reminder to know that you're never a burden to anyone, even if it kind of feels like it, because oftentimes we let our negative self-talk in our head just like go at it, and just because if we just let our own thoughts dictate our lives, wouldn't be good, because it would just everything will just spiral and spiral. And I think it's a good reminder to be able to talk to someone about it, because I know that when I actually like started talking to people about like what was going on in my life, I was like, oh wow, things are magically getting better. I wonder why, because I'm not bottling everything inside.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's gonna get mad at you for talking to them. I think it's just an important thing to like set boundaries with people, like, do I want advice for this, or do I just want to tell someone about it, and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think also remembering to do things that you enjoy, because I feel like a lot of the times it's really easy to just stop doing things that you love when like you're in a depressive or saddened episode, because it's just like it kind of just consumes you. But doing things that you enjoy, at least for me, was something that really helped me like kind of remember that I'm alive.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I've heard before that doing things that you used to do like in your childhood can sometimes bring you into like a better mood. So whether it's like, I don't know, like you kind of said, like going for a run or drawing or just doing something kind of random can definitely like boost your mood. So I think all the advice you gave was really great. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And I just wanted to chat briefly about the stigma that surrounds mental health, because I think we all experience that at some point or another in our lives. So as a young person, what do you think our community can do to improve the stigma that surrounds mental health challenges?
I think honestly just talking about it, because we don't talk about it nearly enough of the time, because I feel like as a society we're like, nope, I can't have mental health issues, that makes me look bad as a person, when honestly everyone has issues. I feel like being able to normalize the fact that yes, we all have mental health issues is something that's so important, because it makes us like it makes us human and not just these things that we see on our phones. Like, it kind of like contributes to like this perfect person that we see only on social media. But if we were to just talk about like the things that we have going on in our lives, it's like, it'd be so much better. Because now when anyone ever talks about like something like that's happened in their life, it's like, oh, they're so brave for that. But, and yes, they're so brave for that because we don't talk about it, and it's so not normal to like talk about anything mental health related, especially like within the media. And when we see like celebrities or something like that, like, oh, they're going to rehab or something like that, it's like, oh, they were struggling, I never would have thought. It's like, we're, at the end of the day, we're all just humans. We all have our own stuff to deal with, and I feel like we should just talk about it more, and I feel like that would help destigmatize it.
Definitely. I 100% agree. I think, like you said, there's some people that believe that, like you said, celebrities maybe don't experience those things, or maybe they feel themselves are untouchable to mental health or mental illness. And I think at some point, I think it's like 1 in 4 adults will experience mental health challenges within their lifetime. So it's something that we should all talk about because we'll probably all experience it at some point. What is one thing you would recommend others do every day to maintain their mental health?
I think that drinking water is really, really important. That sounds kind of weird, like for your mental health, but also water just like improves your body as a whole. I'm pretty sure it improves brain activity from what I've read. I could be completely making that up, but I think that's true. And and just also doing like regular human things like getting up, walking around, breathing. It's just like the small little things that remind you, oh hey, I'm alive. I'm a person too, and not just like kind of, sounds weird, like floating through space. And yeah, just like, it's like, hello, I am a human. I can do things that like a speck of dust can.
Yeah, that's great. How has your experience with, I would say, kind of like poor mental health during the pandemic impacted you in a positive way?
I think I'm a lot more open to talking to other people now, like about mental health or whatever, because I feel like I was like, oh, I'm not alone as like in speaking about mental health. And like, because like I said earlier, everyone like has their own issue. Like, some people's may be more severe than others, but everyone has their own stuff going on in their lives, and everyone deserves to be able to have like a space to talk about that, and like be able to like not have to bottle it up, because bottling it up is like the worst thing ever, because eventually it's just going to all come out and it's not going to be fun. I think it also gave me like more opportunities to like talk to my peers and like get closer to some of my peers, because of like, I'll be like, oh, we're experiencing similar things, and just like being able to help each other out, and like be able to like just see each other where we're at in life, and not where we were, but like also where we're going to be, like seeing each other as like full people, and like experience like seeing each other as like full people, and not just where we are right now, because everyone's always going to be growing and like becoming a new person constantly, instead of just seeing us as like fixed in the stationary point. And I think that's because of my like poor mental health, like it's like opened me up to saying like, oh, this is where I was and this is where I am. And then it's like given me a greater appreciation to see everyone else's journeys and like how they've come about to who they are as a person.
Yeah, I think we're always evolving and changing, and I love that you kind of talked about that in regards to mental health. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was such a joy talking to you. Is there a place that people can go to find out more about you or the things that you do with the LGBTQ Youth Space?
You should go check out the LGBTQ Youth Space website. They're pretty cool. They do lots of cool things over there, and also the staff is really great.
Awesome. Thanks again, Emma, and I hope we can connect soon and chat some more.
Yes, of course.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the To Be Honest podcast, brought to you by Momentum for Health. We're so happy to be able to share the personal, behavioral health, and wellness stories of youth and young adults in Santa Clara County. If you live in Santa Clara County and are in need of behavioral health assistance, please call 800-704-0900. You can also reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24/7 by dialing or texting 988. That's it for now, but we'll be back in just 2 weeks with another episode. Bye!